Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Hello. Day 13 of our 14-day Healthy Mind Challenge. My name is Grant Nash from Mindful Revolution. It's so good to be here. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day today to join us for the session, as we have been doing for 14 days. If you're watching this live now, hello. If you are watching this as a recorded session, hello to you too. Thank you for going in, taking it, downloading it, or watching it, and just putting it in your day. I genuinely appreciate it, but more so, I want you to sort of thank yourself, right? Thank yourself for giving yourself the opportunity to spend 30 minutes with yourself. There's a lot of yourselves there, but you get what I'm saying, right? So thank you. So over the last sort of 13 days, we've been looking at knowledge and tips and tools and practices that help us to build a healthier mind. And I know we've been through a lot together, and Rafael was here, and Mark was here, and Ashley was here. There's lots happening, right? So we've got one more tool left today, and then tomorrow we're going to try to sum it up a little bit and give you a little bit of an overall picture of where you can go for any of those days. If, for example, you're feeling stressed, is there a day that you can go and rewatch? Or you're feeling like you're a bit down and you're energyless, is there a day that you can go and watch? And is there a tool that you can pick up on one of those days? So that's what we're going to do tomorrow. So that should be pretty exciting, and we're going to wrap it all up. But for now, we've got one more tool that I want to speak about. And today's tool is joy. Technically, it's sympathetic joy, vicarious joy. Now, when I was preparing for the session, I looked up the word joy in the dictionary. I don't know why I'm acting like it's in a book. It was online. And I looked up the word joy, and then I read all these definitions of joy. But you know what's interesting is that none of them gave me the feeling that I get when I think about joy. Like, in other words, what I'm saying is every definition is kind of stale. Joy, it's like really difficult to put into words what joy really is. But me and you, we've experienced joy before. We know that feeling. So I thought we'd start the practice by trying to reconnect with a moment of joy in our lives and try to bring that moment of joy back up. And so when we're speaking about joy, instead of thinking about the definition of joy, we think about that moment, that feeling, that thing that we're now going to evoke. Okay, so let's do this together, right? So instead of defining joy for you, I'm going to ask you to define it for yourself. Instead of putting it into words, I'm going to ask you to feel it. Feel the joy. So let's do this together, right? Let's get into what we call our comfortable position, as we have been for the last 14 days. That means grounding ourselves, making sure that our feet are flat on the ground. Maybe we're seated, so making sure we can feel our bum on the chair. If we're lying down, no problem. Just feel whatever is underneath you and really just ground yourself into that. And remember that the ground is saying to you, everything is going to be okay. And why? Because you haven't fallen through the ground. The ground really is there, and everything is going to be okay. And we're going to start, as we do, by taking a few deep in breaths and a few deep out breaths. As we do this, we are reminded of why we do this. These are little gifts to our nervous system, little packets, little moments where we're saying to our nervous system, help me calm down. Okay, so we're going to start right now by taking a deep in breath, and I'm going to try to get you to count all the way up to 4 or even 5 seconds as you deeply inhale at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and feel those lungs. And now exhale for 5 full seconds if you can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to do it again because I might have caught you unawares. Let's go 2, 3, 4, 5, and an exhale through 2, 3, 4, and 5. And let's do one more as we inhale with 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we exhale, squeezing out the diaphragm in 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now in this very relaxed state, I'm going to ask you to bring up a joyful memory. A moment where you felt a lot of joy. Try to recall, maybe it was your wedding day, maybe it was the day your child was born, maybe it was your graduation day, maybe it was the day that you got an email to say you got a new job. anything that reminds you, that takes you to that joyful space, and try to go there. So I'm going to be a little bit quiet for a moment as you do that, to give your mind some time to stop focusing on me and start focusing on the memory. So try to bring up that memory for me right now. And now that you've got that memory, I'm going to ask you to try to feel the joy you felt on that day. The absolute joy. Try to breathe that joy in if you can. Try to sit with that joy and begin to just feel it. Don't think about it too much anymore. And now just feel it. Where does it sit in your body? Is it warm? Is it glowing? Just feel it in your body and bring all those good memories to the forefront. If you're not smiling, then you may be not doing this right. So, really try to bring it up. Smile with that piece of joy. And while you sit in this joy, this is what we're speaking about today. We speak about this feeling, this moment, right? Right here. And that I can't describe. Every definition I've looked at, it just falls short of that feeling. You could open up your eyes now and just come back to the present moment and be with me. That moment that you just felt, that's what we're speaking about, this joy. Now, let's be honest. Joy, as you've experienced it, is something that you want more of. It's the kind of feeling or the experience that you want to do more often, right? When you think about mental health and you think about sort of what we're striving for from a human flourishing perspective, that's kind of a cool experience. Can we replicate that? Can we tap into that? Are there ways in which we can find more ways to create that? Right? Are they always extrinsic? Are they always experiences? Are they always out there? Or could there be a point where we could find a way to get it in here? Can we do this? So let's add this joy. And by definition, this sympathetic joy we're going to speak about into our toolbox to help us go to when we need it, to help us bring out this feeling of joy. So I want to tell you a quick story about a lady named Rachel. And Rachel, sorry, I'm grabbing to get the book. The story of Rachel sits in this book called Lost Connections. We've spoken about it a few times, Why You're Depressed and How to Find Hope by Johan Hari. Johan tells the story of a lady named Rachel. So him and Rachel went to university together, and they sort of met each other. They sat down next to each other in university in the first year. And he says, he hits it off with Rachel. So from the beginning, there was something about Rachel that he just liked, and they spent a lot of time together. And he said that they kind of found solace in their moaning and bitching about things together. So he said, like, he found this person that just was on his wavelength of moaning about everything. Moaning about the way people were dressed, moaning about the way people spoke in the city, moaning about the food on campus, moaning about the lecturer. And he said he would share a lot of this and he would bond with Rachel over this moaning. Now, we all know, and we have probably been in situations, and maybe I speak for myself, where we do this, right? And he says she was really funny. So in other words, she used this moaning and this, and I'm using the word moaning because I don't want to use the other word that I use now because it might be a little bit offensive, right? So I'm just going to use the word moaning, but you get what I'm saying. It's the kind of person that moans about everything and finds that's their humor, that dry, moaning humor. But he says, he used to laugh with her, but the laughing felt a little empty. It's not laughing that sort of makes you feel good. It's laughing at other people. It's laughing at situations. And she came across, and he was at the time a little resentful and a little angry, and they would just moan about everything, the state of the world, and this was the way in which they bonded with each other. And he says, look, they were good friends. They sort of were at university for many years together, but he will recall that she was the moaning buddy, right? She was that person. Now that could be you, it could be someone you know, but you know that thing that I'm speaking about, right? And He said he met her a few years later, quite a few years, about 10 years later, and she heard that he was in town through Facebook, and they reconnected, and they went for coffee. And he said he walked into the coffee bar and he saw Rachel, and he said, oh my goodness. He's like, it looked like a different person. She was lighter. She was softer. She was more joyful. He said she seemed brighter, like there was a light shining out. And he came and he said to her, Rachel, like, what, friend, what are you doing? You look incredible. And she said, thank you. Thank you. I am incredible. I am incredible. And he said, okay, but like, we are only spending time speaking about you now because I want what you have, because this light that's shining out of you, what is going on here? You are like one of those selfie lights, right? There's just something going on here. And she says, well, let me tell you a story. She says, when I left university, she actually got married when she was at university. Her and her husband divorced. And she said she began to reflect on herself as a person. And she began to see that, yes, she was very angry. Yes, she was very resentful. And this is the reason why she would moan about everything and everyone. But more than that, she said she carried a lot of envy. Lots and lots of envy, jealousy about the world around her. And she was envious of how other people behaved and what they got, and they didn't deserve it because she was cleverer than them, and she said she carried this envy around with her. Massive envy, right? And she says when she went out of university, she lost her husband. She lose him in that sense. They got divorced, and life was rubbish, and she got severely depressed, and in the sort of working through the depression, she was medicated, and she started to reflect on all these things, like I say, the anger, the resentment, the moaning, and the envy that came up. And so she had an opportunity as an individual to begin to ask herself, sort of, what am I doing with my life? How do I come to this? Where do I go? Now I'm going to dissect this story out a little bit, because I'm going to tell you how she got to that and what she did to make her bright. But it's interesting because her and Johan in this book, they start to speak about envy as a culture that me and you are primed in. See, our culture primes us for envy. What do we mean by this? We are constantly comparing and competing to the world around us. And we are taught that this is normal, that you can't just there is no ways you're going to get ahead if you don't beat someone, and there's no ways you're going to get ahead if you don't continuously compare yourself to the world around us. Now, where does this come from? This comes from, and it's not just the culture that we've created, this comes from that old cave person brain we've been speaking about, that cave person mind we've been speaking about. Why? Because two reasons, right? Number one is when you are a cave person, you are in small groups of people that protect you. So you're in little groups of 8, 10, 15 people. And so it's really important that you stay within that group, because the moment you get kicked out of that group, you're on your own, and lions like individual humans and not groups of humans to attack, right? I'm simplifying it, but you know what I mean? You are not safe outside of the tribe. You're not safe outside of the tribe. And so what begins to happen is we are primed to want to stay in the tribe. So what do? We're continuously comparing ourselves to the tribe. Ooh, Uncle Chris does that, I must do that. Ooh, everybody likes Auntie Susan because Auntie Susan does this, I must do more Auntie Susan. Oh, everybody likes that one because of what they look like, I must look like that, or whatever it is. So we are continuously comparing and competing with everybody in the tribe so that we can fit in. Now, that's all good and well when there are 15 people in your tribe, but now there are 2.5 million people in your tribe on Instagram. You follow the most beautiful human beings who have the most amount of money, who then go and use apps to make themselves look even more beautiful. You follow Elon Musk and his life. I mean, probably one of the richest men in the world. I don't know if he's the richest, but one of the richest men in the world, and what he does every day. And now you're comparing yourself to them. You're comparing yourself to a curated reality that's not real. You're comparing yourself to what you think their lives are. You compare what you think Elon Musk's life is. You don't know. You don't know what he's going through, but you compare yourself to him all the time, and to all these beautiful models all over Instagram and Facebook and wherever you are. And you can begin to see how envy wells up inside of us. You can see how jealousy wells up inside of us. You can see how we look at ourselves and say we are not worthy. Well, we're not worthy of that curated rubbish that we look at every day, and it's rubbish because it's not real, right? So we look at it every day, and we compare ourselves to it, and we obviously are not going to be able to compete with that, but we do this constantly, and then we take it out into our everyday lives, and we continue behaving like this, reacting like this. And so envy is something that burns up inside of us. And then marketers have used this, right? Marketers are clever people, because all they've had to do is convince you that you need this thing to make you better, and then you're going to buy it, right? So they use envy, they use jealousy, they use it as a tool to get you to buy more stuff. It's really important. So that this new product, this beautiful new pencil, this new product is going to make you happier. And if you don't have it, then you're not as cool as everybody else is, and therefore you need it. All it's telling you is that you're lesser than the people that do have it. And so then you go out and buy the pencil. But if you're getting that constant reminder of the fact that you are not good enough, that there are better people than you, there are better things, and there are things that you need, and that constant drove of these messages continuously, obviously you're going to build up envy, you're going to build up jealousy, and we are primed for this. And then let's go one step further. As when we were cave people, our job was to go and collect as much resources as we possibly could. So in other words, if you could get 3 apples instead of 2 today, which means you can stay in and you can just eat the apples and you wouldn't have to go out, which means lions wouldn't be able to eat you. What's that movie, The Crooks, where he says rule number 1, don't go out of the cave. But we want things, we need things, right? And so again, when you look at our ability to consume currently, we want things. And again, this things, we begin to compare these things to other people's things. And so then we become envious of other people's things. Ooh, nicer house, nicer car, nicer coffee, nicer shirt, nicer watch. I'm envious. So this envy growing in each of us. You know, Eleanor Roosevelt once said, comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. So let's go back to Rachel, right? So Rachel, here she is many years later, and she's telling Johan these stories. And she's like, Johan, I realized this. And then I went on a journey. Could I not find a way to diminish this feeling of envy and jealousy? And she said she came across a practice that is scientifically proven to make us less envious, less jealous, happier, and more satisfied. Scientifically proven to do that. I'm going to go through that research in a moment. But this practice we're going to do today, this sympathetic joy practice, is technically the opposite of jealousy and envy. So sympathetic joy is the opposite of jealousy and envy. It's simply feeling happy for others. It's simply feeling happy for others. And we can grow our ability to be happy for others. We can find joy in other people's joy. Now, let's be honest, it's pretty easy to find joy in family and friends. But can we find joy in everybody else's joy? Can you imagine? I mean, there is an endless amount of joy there waiting for us on tap every day, daily, just out there for us to tap into. It's like this giant swimming pool of joy that exists around us all the time that me and you haven't tapped into. And if we can, and scientifically, we're going to speak about the fact that we can. And if we can, then can you imagine what our existence looks like? When me and you just tap into this endless, boundless amount of joy that is all around us. And this diminishes this envy. This diminishes this jealousy. So Rachel, the reason why Rachel was smiling and shining like she was and how she turned her life around is because of this practice we're going to do. This practice called the sympathetic joy practice. She would do it every day. She would do it every single day. And she did it by the time Johan had come to her. She'd done it for 2 years. Every day, didn't miss a day, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, sometimes within another practice that she did on mindfulness, sometimes just on its own, but she did the sympathetic joy practice every single day. And she said, it works. And by the way, one of the reasons why he writes about this is because he gets this from Rachel. He goes, let me go research it, right? Let me go research it, because she said it's scientifically proven. And he gives you hordes and hordes and hordes of scientific papers to prove that she's right. So one of my favorite studies from this book is by a lady called Yang Kan, and she has two groups of people, those that did this meditation for 8 weeks and those that didn't. And those that did do it, they were clinically depressed, and those that didn't do it were also clinically depressed. So she works at a space where there are people, and she has a control group, and she has a group of clinically depressed people. Besides other treatments, but mainly she took those that were doing the meditation off most of their other treatments. So she literally almost stopped all the other treatments. They obviously consented to this. They said, yeah, no problem. Let's give this a go, right? Let's give this a go. Do you know that 58% of the group afterwards walked away from these practices and said they felt less depressed? And as they practiced it, their depression diminished. And 58% of them, by the time they had finished their practice, said that they were recovering from depression. At the same time, with the control group, after not doing any practices, there were around 2% of people that had said that they were recovering from depression. Now, I'm not saying that this is the answer to depression at all. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that there are scientific studies to say to you that this is incredible. There's a huge gap, and this helps with unhappiness. It helps with those moments of depression and anxiety. And there's lots of research that can point to that. It's really interesting. Another one, remember the story that I told you the other day about kindness and about those group that played the game? So what happened was they had these people that were doing this meditation, this kindness meta meditation, and then they put them in like a game, right? And they didn't tell them there were actors in this game. And the actors would fall down, or they would lose things, and the people that were practicing the kindness meditation, they would go and they would help these people. In other words, they became more kind. Now, the same people that did this, Ferris and Stockholm, they did the same kind of thing, except what they did was they practiced joy. And then they played, it wasn't quite the same, they played little board games. And what they did was they had some of the actors to just come in and tell them how unhappy they are and how joyless their lives are when they were playing this game. And you know what happened? Is that the people that were practicing the sympathetic joy, they were the first people to give that empathetic ear. They were the first people to turn and say, well, why don't we work on that? How do we work on that? How can I help you? So they became more empathetic. They became more helpful. They became more kind by doing this practice. This practice that we're about to do not only makes you more joyful, it helps with depression, it helps with anxiety, it helps with envy and jealousy, it helps to diminish all of these things, but it also makes you a kinder person. A person that cares more about the world around you, a more empathetic person, more sympathetic person. So let's do this practice, right? I'm hoping that I've sold it to you in such a way that you can see that this thing works. This thing works. Okay, we're going to do it together. So this is what we're going to do. I want you to close your eyes again. Okay, and just get into that comfortable position. Again, don't be afraid to get those feet firmly on the ground for me. And now I want you to sit, and I want you to remember the first practice we did. Remember when I asked you to go to your joyful place? Remember that place where, I don't know, you fell in love or something happened? I want you to bring that up again for me. We've practiced it already. So bring it up again. Find that joyful place and just sit with that joyful place for a moment. Now, smile into it and just absorb it. I heard one teacher once say, just swim in the joy. Just swim in the joy. I quite like that. Just swim in the joy. Yeah? Okay. All right, now I want you to picture that someone you deeply love, deeply, deeply love, comes and sits in front of you. And they start telling you of how joyful they are. I want you to imagine that something wonderful happened to them. You know, maybe they are recollecting a moment, or maybe they're telling you that something amazingly joyful happened to them, right? They had the most amazing thing happen and they are so joyful, and they've got the biggest smile in the whole world in front of you, and they are so happy, and they are laughing, and they are smiling, and you can see them. Imagine your mom, your husband, your wife. Just imagine someone that you deeply love sitting in front of you, and they are feeling so much joy. And I want you to try to imagine that joy, try to swim in that joy, try to share in that joy. Try to share in that joy. You can almost feel it, right? You can feel it resonating off them. And I want you to pick that up. And what you will probably see is, if you've chosen the right person here, is that you are feeling joyful for them because they are joyful. They're happy and you're happy, man. They're feeling that joy. You feel it? You feel it? Yeah, it's good, right? Okay. Now I want you to picture someone that you might not know so well. So maybe it's a colleague or the person that helps you at the petrol station, or your barista in the morning from your coffee shop, or just someone. I mean, I'm picturing my security guard who works at my complex. I know her name. Her name is Norma. I don't really know her, but I'm sitting in front of her. And now this person tells you that they just won the lottery, but not that Namibian lottery, not that South African lottery, that American lottery, that $150 million US. And I want you to look into their face and I want you to see them beam with absolute joy. And they're telling you that this is the last day on the job because now all their dreams have come true. They can help their family, they can help themselves, they can go and live an incredible life. And they're just telling you this, and they're so joyful. And I'm hoping that from this, you can begin to feel joyful with them. Mm-hmm. Can you see that joy? Just let that joy flow between you two. Let that joy flow between you. Feels good, right? Okay. Now, the hardest part of this practice. I want you to picture someone you dislike. Maybe someone that works really great for you. Like someone that that, I don't know, maybe that you do envy. And sit them in front of you. So I'm having a thing with my neighbor. I'm not going to get into it. Putting my neighbor in front of me right now. Picturing my neighbor. There we go. Okay. And now I want you to imagine that something amazing has happened for that person. And feel and look at them being so joyful. And sit with whatever comes up here. So be it that you don't feel joyful at all. You might even feel a little bit angry towards that person. Sit with that. Just sit with that. Sit with whatever is happening right now. Know what we've done with the other two, but sit with what comes up right now. If you're not ready to be happy for them, no problem. No problem at all. Right. So I want you to open your eyes now and come back to the room. The aim of that practice, if we meditate on that or practice that for 10 minutes every day, we try to grow specifically that last one. Why do we do this? Because, friends, there's always going to be struggles and hardships and an array of things to be unhappy about in your life. But if you can learn to truly be happy for others, there's always going to be a supply of happiness available to you. Vicarious joy is going to be available in a million ways every single day. And when you don't have hope, when you are not joyful and you're having a bad day, maybe, just maybe, you'll have the ability to be joyful for others. And that changes the game. Hope rises out of this joy, and you can find it absolutely anywhere. I want to read you something from Robin Sharma's new book. It's called The Everyday Hero. Take a listen to this. He says, I was in South Africa for a series on leadership presentations when I noticed that a gentleman who was driving me to the sessions was flooded with glee every time he saw another human being. His eyes would sparkle. His smile would broaden. Each time he saw someone, it was like astonishing to see, says Robert Sharma. He says, he turns to him and he says, you really seem to like people, man. And the guy turns back to him and says, I've seen a lot of dead people. So when I see alive people, this makes me very happy. Robert Sharma says, I remain silent and a little thunderstruck, to be honest. Just imagine how our world would look if we adopt this philosophy. Put down our devices, being less affected by selfishness and busyness and increasing our own decency by paying more attention to the collective humanity around us and each person in front of us, friends and strangers. Just imagine coming alive every time we spot a human life, or any life for that matter. Closed chapter. Just imagine coming alive. For just seeing humans makes us joyful. Can you imagine? Just reveling in their joy makes us joyful. Just being around them makes us joyful. Okay, maybe we're not going to get there just yet. But what we can do is practice sympathetic joy every day. So that when we need joy, like I said, when we are not hopeful, not joyful, and having the ability to be joyful for others, changes the game. This joy rises, and we can find it anywhere. And it's scientifically proven to work. Give it a go. Practice sympathetic joy. Try doing that practice today. Try doing it tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And end up like Rachel, who's now shining, who's beaming, who's gone from being envious and jealous and angry to happy with the world. Because why? Because she can tap into this endless supply of joy. I love it. I love it. Makes me happy. I hope it does for you too. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you tomorrow as we wrap up our 14 days to a healthier mind. Until then, have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.